Welcome back to the second episode of 59's retrospective analysis of the Skywalker Saga. I'm Nazdarachi, and I'm going to be guiding you through the episode 4, A New Hope. Now, I know a lot of you in the audience may already know a lot about Star Wars, so, if you still want to stick around and watch, we definitely appreciate you, but also let us know what your thoughts are on the format. This goes for anyone viewing, honestly. I'm really enjoying this new format for this video series here, and I think it could be applied to a lot of different retrospective and analytical pieces of content. So, of course, down in the comments, let us know what your thoughts are, not only on episodes 4, 5, and 6, but as well, again, the aesthetic, the visual appeal. You like some eye candy to go along with the information, right? If you do enjoy it, consider leaving a like on it. A lot of work does go into this project, so we appreciate each and every set of eyes that can manage to find this video and, take a gander at it. If you're new around here, consider subscribing to 59 as well, because we do lots of different pop culture, be it Marvel, Star Wars, different movies, TV shows, as well as video games and gacha content. So hopefully there'll be something for everybody. With that being said, let's jump into Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Possibly my favorite, between this and Empire Strikes Back of the entire series. The thing I really like about this movie is it was made at great personal risk by George Lucas. He did not want to sell out and take any funding from any bigger motion picture studios. He wanted to retain a majority of the rights and make the film that he wanted to make. Most film companies were very worried about things like this, and the plot of the movie was not seen as something very popular at the time in the late 70s, so many people didn't even give him a chance. But eventually, Fox took the risk on it, and we can all tell how it's exploded since then. Of course, Star Wars has had its ups and downs, but I do think 4, 5, and 6 represent the golden age of the series, where everything came from, and I personally I really enjoy it. Even to this day, the effects, the movies, they hold up. They, are not a perfect screenplay or script writing, but they're still timeless and watchable by pretty much anyone at any age and enjoyable. So, moving into the movie itself, Episode 4, A New Hope, we are all brought to the film that did start it all. Once again, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Hui hui. In the current period of civil war, the rebels have landed their first semi-victory against the evil galactic empire because the rebel spies did manage to secure the secret plans of the empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. Now, most people, even not fans of the series who may have never even seen it, probably have at least heard of the Death Star, but just as a very quick recap, of course, it is a big, round, armored space station with the capability of wiping out an entire planet in a single concussive blast. And it can wipe out multiple planets too. You can fly around the galaxy and just start blowing up planets all over the place. So a very devastating weapon that's most definitely in the wrong hands. Something else as a side note here, we saw a lot of the events leading up to the beginning of Episode 4 in Rogue One at the very end, which, whether you like the movie or not, I thought that was a neat little kind of Easter egg experience that helps perfectly segue those events that happened off-screen in A New Hope directly into this movie here. So, worth watching. Even if you're not a huge fan of the series, I thought that was pretty neat just for that little direct continuation there. Princess Leia, of course, is the current custodian of the stolen plans. She is fleeing an Imperial Star Destroyer over Tatooine in her little Corvette ship. She's attempting to get home to Alderaan in the hopes of giving the plans to the rebels for a key opportunity to potentially restore peace to the galaxy by taking out this devastating weapon, assuming they can analyze the plans and find a weakness. It has been roughly 19 years since Sheev Palpatine seized control in the Galactic Republic and turned it into the Galactic Empire. And of course, during that time, there was only one organization brave enough to stand in the Empire's way. It was the Rebel Alliance. Mostly guerrilla tactics. They don't have the might or the numbers to directly compete, but you know how the little guy usually does in stories like these. You kind of just opportunistically pick battles and show up, engage, and then disappear. Guerrilla warfare once again. During the Civil War, again, we covered that Leia has the plans and Vader is pursuing. Of course, we know that That's not going to go well because the Star Destroyer has much larger engines and it very quickly catches up to the Corvette, and Leia is intercepted before she can get anywhere near Alderaan. So Imperial stormtroopers, of course, start to board the ship. They cut right through the door and they start killing everyone on board. The Sith Lord Darth Vader waits for his opportunistic, perfect movie-type entrance, walking over the corpses of everyone who's died before he comes in. And he immediately walks up to a rebel captain who's been detained by the stormtroopers and quote-unquote questions him. He asks him one question, and then without even really giving the dude a chance to respond, he strangles him and just throws him off to the side. Vader wants what he wants, and he knows what the plans are on the ship, and he's not going to let any BS get in the way. Nobody's going to lie to him or fake him out here. He knows what he's after. He can almost smell it. So, with that being said, Princess Leia is soon discovered by the stormtroopers, kind of hiding in the back of the ship. Before they stun and capture her, she does, of course, manage to record the holographic message and as well stash the plans inside R2-D2's databanks. Of course, the modus operandi here is for this message to get down to the planet on Tatooine, where a certain old retired Jedi is in hiding. Leia, of course, trying to recruit him back to the cause. So that is the mission assigned to R2, and C-3PO, just for lack of anything better to do, just kind of tags along. They escape in an escape pod, which, of course, is not destroyed because the Star Destroyer finds no life forms on it when being scanned. So maybe they just assume that it got jettisoned by mistake. Either way, that's a mistake that definitely costs them. Vader sends a message back to the Imperial Senate, informing them that Leia's ship has been destroyed along with everyone on board. This was true, except of course for the droids, who managed to escape. They're gonna attempt to go on their mission, but they very quickly start arguing and part ways. Doesn't matter too much because they are picked up by Jawas, Tatooine's resident scavengers, not long after. The droids kind of droid nap them, essentially stealing them, and sell them off to Owen Lars and his nephew Luke Skywalker. Now, R2-D2 goes along with this for a little bit, but he ends up playing a little piece of the message that Luke catches wind of. And of course, Luke is very bored living on Tatooine, so he is extremely curious at the sight of this, which leads R2 into conning him into removing the restraining bolt, allowing R2-D2 to escape off into the night, which of course it's too dangerous to pursue due to the Tusken Raiders. So they decide to wait till morning and pursue R2-D2. So it's Luke Skywalker, C-3PO in their little hovercraft there, the speeder, following the droid. But of course, they see the bantha through the binoculars. Luke takes a second to stop, and pretty quickly after that, they're both attacked by Tusken Raiders, which kind of proves the point that Luke was talking about how dangerous they were. Couldn't imagine what would have happened if they kind of went out at night, because he already kind of got pwned and it was in broad daylight. At this point, of course, Obi-Wan comes up and saves Luke and the C-3PO and R2-D2 by extension by scaring off the Tusken Raiders, at which point they all retreat back to Obi-Wan's homestead. It's here where Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber, recalling the friendship they once had in the past, giving him a very rough, ambiguous rundown of the history of Luke's father and how Darth Vader betrayed and murdered him. R2-D2 then plays the entire message of Leia asking for Obi-Wan's help, and after listening to the message, Kenobi does attempt to convince Luke to come with him, sensing that Luke is strong in the Force as well as needing the help because he's kind of an old man at this point. At first, Luke does refuse to go, but at that point, they start to connect the chain of events that the Empire is most likely looking for the droids. At that point, of course, we discover Luke rushing back home to find the murdered corpses of his aunt and uncle. So with no reason to stay on Tatooine anymore, he didn't even really want to be there in the first place. He wanted to leave, but the farm and his family was really the only thing holding him behind. With all that gone and out of the way, Luke does decide to go with Obi-Wan and the droids to try and head to Alderaan. They immediately head over to Mos Eisley to find a means of transportation to get there, and for 17,000 credits, the smuggler Han Solo and his Wookiee companion Chewbacca agree to take the job. A brief scuffle well, this next part kind of depends on which version of the movie you're watching. In the original, there's just the scuffle between Han and Greedo. Then, of course, there's been like 9 different edits. No, not that many, I'm exaggerating. But there's been a bunch of different edits. And they also included a sequence where Han Solo is talking to Jabba the Hutt about the debt, about how he had to dump his cargo, promising him that, this job he's about to do will provide him some of the money that he needs to come back and pay Jabba. Because that's pretty much what Han did. He bargained with them to get, roughly the amount he needed to pay off his debt. So with everything fine for now, all parties, kind of pacified, they depart for Alderaan. So there's a little bit of a sequence where they're traveling in hyperspace, getting there. Of course, Obi-Wan imparts some additional Jedi wisdom onto Luke. There's that little holographic chess sequence. Some little cool world building going on in that sequence of events there. But then they come out of hyperspace only to find that Alderaan has been destroyed. And they were kind of just spat out of hyperspace into an asteroid field. So, well, Obi-Wan kind of knew the planet was destroyed, because as soon as they show up, he's like, it's completely gone. It's been reduced to atoms, essentially, quoting Thanos. But they don't know how it happened. So they start heading towards what they think to be a moon, and then Obi-Wan very quickly has his iconic line, that's no moon, it's a space station, and then the tractor beam gets them and pulls them into the landing bay. At this point, it kind of becomes like Metal Gear Solid in Star Wars, because they got to sneak around, get disguises, do some espionage type stuff. So I honestly really like this sequence. So in the space station's landing bay, they quickly develop a plan to get the jump on the stormtroopers that board the Falcon, steal their uniforms, at which point they come to the conclusion they need to disable the tractor beam, and they split up. Obi-Wan goes his separate way to disable the tractor beam. Meanwhile, Luke and Han discover that Leia is being held prisoner. So R2-D2 kind of finds that out by plugging into the Imperial network. They find out she's in the detention block. And again, Luke convinces Han and Chewbacca to save him, with the potential for that reward, which will help Han pay off those debts to Jabba even easier. So Luke instructs the droids to stay behind, so they kind of split up into a 3-way group here, while he and Solo use Chewbacca as a fake prisoner to approach the detention block. They make their way to Leia's holding cell, and Luke's plan works at first until they show up and just start beating the crap out of everyone and shooting all of the components, the communications, and the rebels, kind of make a little bit of a blunder there because the Empire doesn't really buy Han's story, and they're about to send reinforcements. But they do end up rescuing the princess, who decides to take matters into her own hands. She's very quickly established as a very strong and independent character who is cunning in battle and a dangerous adversary to those who would cross her path, honestly. She blasts a nearby grate, and they all basically retreat into a garbage chute. While kind of Han and Chewbacca, hold off enemies for a minute. There's a nice little sequence of Han kicking Chewbacca in the rear end as he falls down. And then Han kind of does a little yahoo as he jumps down the grate. But once down there, they kind of find out they're locked in, and it is, in fact, a trash compactor. But before they even get that far and the walls start closing in, of course, there's a little sequence with the Dianoga, a little tentacle monster that pulls Luke under the water. So they're kind of dealing with that for a second. But as soon as that creature leaves, Luke reappears, gains his breath back, and the walls start to close in on everybody. Luke is desperately calling out to C-3PO to shut down the trash compactor. There's a little bit of a holdup because stormtroopers are kind of wandering around inside of the area where C-3PO and R2 are, kind of stall them for a second. But R2 does manage to shut down the trash compactor, of course, in the nick of time, preventing all of the main characters from the entire series from instantly dying and ending the series forever before it could even happen. So it's pretty good. R2-D2 is a goat right there. So everyone escapes. They get back to the Millennium Falcon. Assuming Obi-Wan has done his job, they just kind of start the takeoff process. But at that point, we do see Obi-Wan encountering Darth Vader from across the hangar bay. So, of course, it's destiny for these two to reunite, knowing what happens in the first 3 movies as we do, in the order that we're covering this. They are, a match made in combat. So Obi-Wan meets his old Padawan. The two begin their final duel. Obi-Wan, of course, knowing a little bit more about the Force than Anakin. He was much more experienced Jedi, had more time to take everything in, to train, to learn before, Anakin went bad. He wasn't a Jedi for quite as long, so he knows that upon death, he will become much stronger and able to more directly help Luke in his path to becoming a Jedi. So he willingly sacrifices himself to Darth Vader, turning his lightsaber off and allowing Darth Vader to essentially cut him in half. This does allow Luke and the company the time to escape, because basically all the stormtroopers are over there watching as well. But Luke is pretty upset. He takes out a couple stormtroopers on their way out. As directly after this sequence, there is a dogfight with the enemy TIE fighters. Luke and Han both take them on, destroy them all. It kind of shows that even though Luke is an amateur, he does have a pretty good skill set. Due to him being so bored on Tatooine, he spent a lot of time flying around his little T-16 and targeting very small critters, I would assume. So I guess, he's a pretty skilled pilot, and they demonstrate there without having to give him too much, backstory, like show him training or something. It's kind of built into his character, which I kind of like. It helps the movie just kind of move forward a little quicker, and helps with the suspension of disbelief. The rebels at this point plan an attack that appears to be nearly impossible to pull off, because it requires small one-man fighters to attack this massive space station, because most of the space station's weaponry is more so designed for a large-scale assault and defending against that, capital ships and whatnot. Things that would conceivably actually be a threat to the space station is what it's designed to combat, not necessarily little one-man stunt fighters. So at the same time, of course, the Death Star had a tracking beacon on the Millennium Falcon, kind of allowing them to escape so that they could find the Rebels' home base and blow it up, just like they did to Alderaan. So at this point, Han kind of just dips out. He's like, I gotta go pay Jabba, and he just kind of disappears, right after receiving his reward. Questionable character at this point. Although relatively unoptimistic, the rebels do set off to the Death Star and launch their assault before the Death Star is able to destroy their base on Yavin 4. The rebels manage to hit the station's vulnerable spot after many people die. Of course, Vader's just in there. Once they realize the stunt fighters are trying to attempt what they're trying to do, because the Imperials analyze the rebels' attack patterns and they find the same weakness that the rebels' plans gave off. After that point, Darth Vader's like, screw this, I'm going in there in my fighter and we're blowing up everybody. So a lot of rebels are killed during the battle, including Luke's best friend, Biggs Darklighter, who they both grew up together on Tatooine. Biggs was a little bit older, he left first. Luke is then nearly picked off by Darth Vader himself in his personal advanced TIE fighter, but he was saved at the last second by Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon, of course, suddenly showing up to join the fight. Kind of like an oh wow, he's not a jerk kind of moment. Of course, it's just a nice little surprise they threw in there. Tried to throw you a little curveball there, and it worked out pretty well. It makes you think, of course, much better about Han. And of course, with this window of opportunity that Han granted Luke, and Kenobi's guidance and turning off his targeting computer and just using the Force, Luke was able to accurately shoot 2 proton torpedoes into the exhaust port, effectively destroying the main reactor via chain reaction and blowing up Grand Moff Tarkin. He was probably the most important person on the space station, very, very high up, even higher than Vader at the time, closer to the Emperor. He was, even though the whole hierarchy of the Empire wasn't fully fleshed out at this time, Grand Moff Tarkin, was basically who Vader was reporting to at the time. So he blows up. Vader, of course, spins off into space because Han didn't blow him up, just kind of damaged his ship. And the remaining rebel ships return to Yavin 4, where they celebrate their victory. Of course, Luke, Han, and Chewbacca. Wait, Luke and Han are given medals. Chewbacca never got his medal. Oh, man, okay. So Luke, Han, and Chewbacca are basically celebrated as the heroes of the event. Princess Leia there, of course, giving them their commendations. The rebels were successful in the attack on the Death Star, giving that new hope to the rebellion and to the people of the galaxy, because nobody wants to live under a tyrannically ruled iron fist of a government. The rebels, of course, being one step closer to returning peace to the galaxy. But, of course, our heroes would not be able to revel in their victory for long, because even though the Death Star was such a massive weapon, it was but a small piece of the full might of the Empire. And that's going to segue into part 2 of this episode here. And that's all I really have to say. I hope you enjoyed this little first portion here. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
After their attack on the Death Star, the rebellion begins to face a dark time. The Empire has driven them out of their hidden base on Yavin and continues to pursue them across the galaxy. The rebellion now has a new secret base established with the help of freedom fighters led by Luke Skywalker. Determined to find Skywalker, Darth Vader dispatches thousands of remote probes to locate him. Now, 3 years after the rebels destroyed the Death Star, the Empire is hell-bent on taking out the Rebel Alliance. The Imperials succeeded in flushing them out of their previous base on Yavin 4, forcing the rebels to regroup on a new base on an ice planet called Hoth. One of the many probes Darth Vader launched looking for Luke Skywalker landed on the planet while he was on patrol on his Tauntaun. Before being able to investigate, Luke is knocked unconscious by a wild Wampa beast. So when Luke fails to report in, Han Solo goes out and looks for his comrade on his own Tauntaun. Skywalker wakes up and finds himself hanging upside down in a cave and sees a Wampa feasting on his Tauntaun. Using the Force, Luke is able to grab his lightsaber and set himself free, slashing the Wampa before he joined the fate of his mount. Skywalker escapes the cave but is unable to find the rebels' base because of a snowstorm and just collapses. Out of nowhere, Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost appears before him, instructing Luke to go to Dagobah and commence training with Master Yoda. Kenobi's spirit suddenly disappears and Han finds Luke nearly frozen to death. In order to save his friend, Solo uses Luke's lightsaber, cuts open his own Tauntaun and places Skywalker in it to keep him warm. Han then erects a shelter he and Luke will stay in before they can be rescued the following morning. After they are saved by fellow rebels, they are both brought back to base and Luke is placed in a Bacta tank to heal his injuries. Princess Leia urges Han to stay with the rebels. He tells her the only reason she wants him to stay is because she's developed feelings for him. Leia loses her temper and tells him off. Meanwhile, the probe sent for Luke identifies a rebel's base and sends a signal back to the Empire shortly after being destroyed by Han and Chewbacca. After receiving the new intel, Darth Vader orders his fleet to invade Hoth. Realizing this, the rebels' general prepares the Alliance to evacuate. Darth Vader and his forces are on course for Hoth and are preparing their attack. The rebels assemble whatever equipment they can onto transports to secure their escape. Luke, now fully healed, bids Solo and Chewbacca farewell, who have decided to leave the Alliance to settle their debt with Jabba the Hutt. As the Imperial forces enter Hoth, the rebel base launches their energy shield, momentarily keeping them safe from ranged fire. Frustrated that the rebels were aware of their arrival, Vader force chokes one of the Imperial admirals to death and appoints a new one immediately. He then orders the Imperial ground forces to land outside the rebel shield and march to the power generator to destroy it. To allow her fellow rebels to escape, Leia orders for ion cannons to be fired at the oncoming Imperial Star Destroyers, thus granting a window for the transports to flee safely. Rebel pilots assigned to hold off the Imperial's ground forces begin to depart and are faced with the Imperial's AT-STs and their gigantic camel-like AT-ATs. Rogue Squadron leader Luke Skywalker commands a group attacking by snowspeeders. He realizes that the massive AT-ATs are impervious to blaster fire and suggests using the ship's tow cables to tangle the walker's legs. In their first approach, Luke's gunner is killed, leaving his childhood friend Wedge to make the first attempt. They manage to topple one of the AT-ATs, but the main AT-AT prepares to fire at the rebel base's power generator just as Luke is shut down and nearly crushed. Imperial troops have begun storming the base, forcing Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO to retreat. As they leave, Leia gives the rebels the evacuation command. Meanwhile, Luke manages to destroy an AT-AT entirely on his own, cutting a hole in the belly of the AT-AT and tossing a thermal detonator inside. The main AT-AT, led by an Imperial general, shoots the base's generator and destroys it, rendering the base completely defenseless. The rebels suffer many casualties from the battle. Han and company realize that they are being followed by none other than Darth Vader himself. They make their way to the Millennium Falcon just in time to escape, and as they fly off, Luke reaches R2 and his X-Wing and takes off to Dagobah. As the Falcon is being pursued by TIE fighters, Han attempts to activate lightspeed but realizes the hyperdrive has been damaged. To keep the TIE fighters at bay, Han flies into this asteroid field. And to completely lose their pursuers, the crew lands in this mysterious cavern on one of the asteroids to get a moment of reprieve and repair the ship. Luke finds Dagobah and lands on the marshy swamp planet. His landing was not the most successful, losing his X-Wing in the planet's swamp in the process, but after composing himself, he notices a peculiar miniature being. Luke tells him that he is looking for Master Yoda, so the being offers to take him to meet the Jedi Master. Back on the Falcon, Han charms the princess and the two exchange a passionate kiss. Leia pulls away quickly after C-3PO walks in on them. Vader, determined to find Han and the others, sends the entirety of the Imperial's Death Squadron to begin a sweep of the asteroid field. Suddenly, Vader is informed by one of the Admiral Imperial that the Emperor commands they make contact immediately. Vader then orders his ship out of range of the asteroid field to make a clear transmission with his master. Now in his private quarters, Vader receives a message from Sidious, who informs him that there is a new threat to the Empire, Luke Skywalker. Vader suggests if they manage to turn young Skywalker over to the dark side, he could instead become a powerful ally. His master agrees, asking his apprentice if this could be achieved. Darth Vader responds, "He shall join us, or die." Meanwhile, Luke is brought back to the hut of the creature he had met. Skywalker insists that he must find Master Yoda, but the creature responds he is not far, telling the boy he lacks patience, in which the voice of Kenobi is heard, saying he will learn patience if he is to be trained. So in this moment, Luke has a realization that the small figure he had been traveling with was, in fact, the Jedi Master Yoda he was looking for. Yoda asks Kenobi if he will finish his training, suspecting that Skywalker will one day succumb to fear. The following day, Solo and company are forced to escape the cave they were residing in. It turns out the cave was actually a Titanic space slug. During this time, Luke undergoes rigorous training with Yoda, including moral lessons and the dangers of the dark side of the Force. The latter lesson is driven home especially when Luke enters a cave that is so strong with the dark side's power. Luke ignores Yoda's instruction to go in unarmed, and once inside he has a vision of himself confronting Darth Vader, beheading the Sith Lord. But when the severed head's mask bursts apart, it reveals Luke's own face. A warning to young Skywalker that if he battles Vader with no emotional control, he'll be seduced to the dark side. Back on the Star Destroyer, Darth Vader enlists multiple bounty hunters to hunt down the Millennium Falcon for a reward. One of the bounty hunters included Boba Fett. One of the Imperial commanders spots the Falcon, forcing Solo to go on the offensive in an effort to overwhelm the Star Destroyer for a moment. Little did they realize, when the ship veered off, it attached itself to the rear of the cruiser in secret, making it appear as if they had suddenly vanished. Back on Dagobah, days have passed since Luke's training had begun. When noticing his ship during training, Luke becomes distracted, noting that he will never be able to retrieve it from the swamp because of the ship's size. Yoda responds that getting the ship out of the swamp is no different from his training. Luke says he will try, in which Yoda scolds and saying, "No, do or do not, there is no try." With many attempts, Luke is unable to get his ship out of the swamp. Yoda then lends a hand using the Force, lifting this X-Wing as Luke just watches in awe. Han and company, still hiding under the Star Destroyer, then suddenly Solo comes up with an escape plan. When the vessel completes its standard waste dump, they'll detach from the ship and float away with the debris. Their plan nearly goes perfectly, but veteran bounty hunter Boba Fett catches on, following the heroes to Cloud City in secret. The following day, Luke awakes with Yoda, offering him some Jedi wisdom. He tells Skywalker that he will see many things in his mind: the past, future, and friends he recognizes. Luke then has a vision of his friends in danger, telling Yoda that he wants to leave and help him. Yoda tells young Skywalker that if he leaves now, everything he has fought for will be destroyed. Luke's friends arrive at Cloud City and Han reunites with his friend Lando Calrissian. That same evening, Luke prepares to leave Dagobah with R2, but is warned by both Yoda and the ghost of Obi-Wan to complete his training before leaving. Before he left, Kenobi provided Skywalker with a piece of advice: if he has to fight Vader, he must do so without interference. Luke understands and sets off to help his friends. Yoda, disappointed in his recklessness, Kenobi tells Yoda that the boy is their last hope, in which Yoda responds, "No, there is another," alluding to the fact that Leia is Luke's sister. A day passes, and Solo and company find themselves betrayed by Lando. Lando was approached by the Empire just before the Rebels' arrival on the planet, threatening him and the city if he did not cooperate. The crew becomes captives of Darth Vader, who proceeds to torture Han and Leia to create a disturbance in the Force for Luke to sense. And while this was going on, Chewbacca attempted to assemble a dismantled C-3PO but ended up putting the droid's head on backwards. After the torture, Lando informs the rebels that they would be confined to Cloud City and Han would be given to Boba Fett. Leia believes that Vader wants them all dead, but Lando assures that he is only after someone with the name Skywalker. The rebels then all realize that they are simply being used as bait to lure Luke to the city. So that afternoon, Han Solo is put under a carbon freezing chamber where his allies can do nothing but watch. Solo becomes entombed in carbonite and is handed over to Boba Fett to deliver to Jabba. Vader then orders Lando to take Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO to his Star Destroyer, but Calrissian had other plans. Luke, he now arrives at Cloud City. He notices Boba Fett carrying his friend, now frozen, aboard his ship. And in an attempt to follow the bounty hunter, Fett fires at Skywalker, forcing him to flee, where he eventually reunites with the rest of his friends. Luke tries to ambush the stormtroopers holding them, but is unsuccessful. Leia tries to warn her brother that he is walking into a trap, but he continues to give chase running into Darth Vader. The two proceed to engage in an epic combat via lightsaber, one of my personal favorite moments in this trilogy. Unfortunately for Luke, Vader's unparalleled skills prove to be too much for the rookie Jedi. As the rebel prisoners are being escorted to Vader's Star Destroyer, they are suddenly attacked by Cloud City security, setting them free. Chewbacca attacks Lando in this moment for betraying Han, but he informs the Wookiee that there is still a chance to save his friend. C-3PO is reunited with his droid companion R2-D2 and the group heads off to save Solo. Sadly, when the group arrives at the scene, Boba Fett's ship had already taken off and they engage in a firefight with the remaining stormtroopers. Meanwhile, Luke and Darth Vader's battle raged on. Vader attempted to free Skywalker when he fell into the same chamber as Han, but he just jumped out just in time using the Force. Their fight continued with Vader using the dark side of the Force to hurl multiple objects at Luke, but one of the projectiles breaks this window, creating a vacuum, throwing Luke outside. At the same time, Luke's friends managed to escape Cloud City along with Lando and the Millennium Falcon. Skywalker had been pushed to his limits. His battle with Vader took place on the city's emergency platform. When Vader knocked Luke on his feet, he granted him the opportunity to surrender, but Luke, he wasn't through just yet. During their battle over a seemingly bottomless pit, Luke suddenly beats Vader's right shoulder with his lightsaber, damaging his armor slightly. In retaliation, Vader slashes off the hand Luke held his lightsaber in. His limb, along with his lightsaber, fall, leaving Skywalker defenseless. And at this moment, one of the most epic scenes of Star Wars history plays out. Darth Vader reveals his true identity to Luke, that he is his father. Luke cannot believe what he had just heard and accuses Vader of lying, in which Vader responds for him to look in his heart and understand the truth. Frightened with this realization of the truth, Luke falls into despair, still in disbelief. Vader then invites Luke to join him and destroy the Emperor so that they can rule the galaxy as father and son. Luke rather chose death than be corrupted like his father and jumped into the pit beneath them. Skywalker falls into an air vent and is caught by an antenna underneath the city. Knowing he could do nothing to save himself, he calls for help. First for Kenobi, and then to Leia. His sister miraculously senses Luke's cries for help and directs the Falcon to go back to Cloud City in order to save him. Opening the Falcon's escape hatch, Lando catches Luke as he falls onto the ship and they manage to escape. As enemy Imperials give chase to the Falcon, Luke speaks to his father telepathically, afterwards crying out to Kenobi for not telling him the truth. In the nick of time, R2 is able to repair the Falcon's hyperdrive, allowing the rebels to evade their pursuers using, of course, the hyperdrive. So now, at a rebel frigate, Luke receives a new prosthetic hand. Lando promises Leia that he will save Han and sets off in the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca. Luke, Leia, and the droids watch as the Falcon sets off to the unknown, unsure of the fate that precedes them.
After the events of the previous film, it seems as if despair has fallen across the entire galaxy. The rebels are on the run, Luke and his companions have been separated from their friend Han, and now the Empire is in the process of building a new Death Star, even more powerful than the first one. In The Return of the Jedi, we see how the Skywalker siblings and their allies managed to defeat the evil Empire and restore peace to the galaxy once more in this epic conclusion to the original trilogy. Some time has passed since we've last seen our heroes. During that time, the Empire has been scheming to build a brand new Death Star, one that would rival the immense power of the original. Darth Vader lands in the new Death Star, albeit incomplete at the moment. Vader instructs one of the Imperial commanders to resume construction so the space station is completed on time. The commander explains that they need more men to get the job done, but he quickly ignores this point and complies when he realizes the Emperor is coming. In the meantime, Luke Skywalker and company arrive on Tatooine to save Han Solo, who is being held at the palace of Jabba the Hutt. Luke has R2-D2 and C-3PO head into the palace where they play a holographic message Skywalker made for him. In his message, Luke tells Jabba to hand over Solo in exchange for the droids, ensuring that they are very hardworking. Jabba the Hutt refuses, saying that he could never part with his favorite decoration, being the propped, carbonated Solo. Jabba takes the droids away and puts them to work, having C-3PO speak as his impersonal interpreter. Later, Princess Leia, disguised as a bounty hunter, arrives with Chewbacca, who is being used as a fake prisoner once again. She comes to Jabba to offer the Wookiee for the bounty he placed on him years ago along with Solo. After negotiating and a little threatening, the two settle on a deal and Chewbacca is imprisoned. That night, Leia goes to Han and releases him from his carbonated confinement. Leia reveals herself to him, and the two exchange a kiss, and just before they are able to escape, they are found out by Jabba and his lackeys. Han becomes detained with his Wookiee companion, while Leia becomes the Hutt's personal slave. Later on, Luke comes to the palace as well, asking for Jabba to release his friends. When he refuses Skywalker's offer, Jabba drops him through the trapdoor along with one of his guards. Beneath the Hutt's palace was a Rancor pit. The beast quickly picks up the fallen guard and devours him. With his Jedi training, Luke is able to defeat the Rancor, crushing it under a gate that pierces the monster with its spikes. Following the battle, Skywalker then becomes captured as well. Han, Chewbacca, and Luke are then presented before Jabba, who sentences them to be executed by a Sarlacc, a man-eating monstrosity. En route to the Sarlacc pit, Leia can do nothing but watch as she is chained to Jabba's throne on his sail barge. Outside on a skiff, Han is still hazy from the effects of carbonation, and is sure that they are all going to die. Luke assures his friend that won't happen, but he isn't easily convinced. Back on the sail barge, C-3PO confides to R2-D2 over their friend's imminent deaths, but R2 appears confident. Now at the pit, Luke is up first. He's ushered off a plank into the pit, but before falling to his death, he uses the Force to flip into the air. As soon as he does this, R2 snaps into action and launches Luke his newly built lightsaber. Skywalker dispatches the surrounding guards, and Jabba becomes furious. Boba Fett flies over the jetpack to their skiff and attempts to stop the heroes from escaping. Luke unshackles Han and Chewbacca. The Wookiee lends Skywalker a hand and shoves the bounty hunter after getting his blaster slashed by the Jedi. Lando, who was disguised as a guard on the skiff, gets knocked off and slowly falls to his death. He is soon saved by Solo and Chewbacca. Han is able to best Boba Fett when he activated the bounty hunter's jetpack with an axe, sending him into the Sarlacc pit where he totally dies and never comes back in a live-action television series years later. Leia takes advantage of the chaos happening outside and turns off the sail barge's interior lights. She then grabs her chain and uses it to strangle Jabba, killing him. With the help of R2-D2, Leia is freed from her chains and heads to the top of the sail barge along with the two droids. Luke and Leia take out the rest of the guards on the top of the sail barge and use a cable from the ship's sail, swinging back to the skiff their friends were on while shooting the sail barge with blasters. The crew retrieves the droids with magnets on the skiff and depart Tatooine. Luke and R2 head back to Dagobah while Han and the others travel to the Rebels' rendezvous point near Sullust. Back on the new Death Star, the Emperor praises Vader for his efforts on the construction of the new space station. He could also sense his apprentice's determination to find his son. The old Sith Lord assured Vader that the boy would seek his father out, and that only together they would turn him over to the dark side. Luke and R2 land on Dagobah, only to find a terminally ill Yoda. Skywalker pleads to the dying Jedi Master that he needs to complete his training, but Yoda declared no further training was needed. He told Luke that all he had to do now was confront Darth Vader, confirming that the Sith Lord is indeed his father. Before he dies, Yoda offers the young Jedi one last piece of advice and becomes one with the Force. Before taking off in his X-Wing, Luke was approached by the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He tells Luke that Vader was once known as Anakin Skywalker, a former Jedi Knight who was seduced to the dark side. He also reveals that Leia is his twin sister. He also explained that they were separated at birth and then hidden to be safe from the Emperor's grasp. Luke senses this to be true and is told by Obi-Wan to bury his feelings, that they could be used to serve the Emperor. Now gathered at the rendezvous point near Sullust, the rebels discuss their plans to destroy the new Death Star. Part of the plan involves the Skywalker twins, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and their droids joining a strike team and taking out a deflector shield generator on the forest moon of Endor. With the shields offline, the rest of the rebels will launch their attack and destroy the Death Star. Darth Vader becomes aware of this plan by sensing Luke and allows the rebels to land on Endor. Luke also senses his father, believing that he could become a hindrance to the mission by coming by. When the strike team lands, they are immediately discovered by enemy scout troopers. Leia is chased by the scouts on speeder bikes and is eventually thrown off her own bike and is rendered unconscious. Noticing her helmet, Luke, Han, Chewbacca, and the droids set out to find her. Leia awakes to one of Endor's furry inhabitants known as Ewoks. Before she is pursued by another scout trooper, her new Ewok ally dispatches the trooper. While looking for the princess, the rest of the group trips one of the Ewoks' main booby traps. R2 manages to set them free, but all of them are eventually taken in by the Ewoks as their prisoners, declaring C-3PO as their god in the process. Now brought to the Ewok settlement, the heroes are reunited with Leia, and with a little Jedi magic, Luke is able to sway the Ewoks to the rebels' cause. Luke then decides that it is time for him to leave Endor and face Darth Vader. Before leaving, he speaks to Leia, informing her that they are siblings and that Vader is their father. Leia is surprised by this, but accepts it as truth. Vader then arrives in his shuttle on Endor, where he is met by his son Luke, who has already surrendered to the Empire in order to see him. He attempts to bring the Sith Lord out from the dark side, but is not successful. Luke is then sent for transportation to the Death Star to meet the Emperor. The next day, the rebels prepare for their final attack. Luke is now at the Death Star and is led to the Emperor by his father. Palpatine tells the Jedi he looks forward to completing his training. He also reveals that the rebels located the shield generator because he intended them to, preparing a trap for them. As soon as the rebels enter the heart of the shield generator, they are captured by Imperial forces. The rebel fleet, aiming to destroy the Death Star, emerges from hyperspace, but are unable to launch their attack. As they were determining their options, the Imperial fleet, thought to have been a safe distance away, suddenly appears, and the two ships engage in battle. Back on Endor, Han and the strike team are led out to the shield generator's bunkers by stormtroopers. Unbeknownst to the enemy troopers, the droids and the Ewoks comprise a plan to defeat the Imperials. Now free, Han and the strike team fight alongside with the Ewok allies in an intense firefight against the Empire. There are many casualties on both sides, but Han, Leia, and Chewbacca manage to get back in the bunker. Back on the Death Star, Luke takes a swing at the Emperor after he prodded him to do so. Darth Vader intervenes and blocks his attack, initiating the final battle between father and son. Luke climbs to a balcony, and in response, Vader launches a lightsaber at the Jedi, but misses. Instead, he knocks the whole balcony down along with his son. Vader stalks the rubble and begins to taunt Luke in order to drive him out of the shadows. He succeeded in luring Luke out when he mentioned turning Leia over to the dark side. Enraged, Luke lashed out to Vader, striking him so hard he cut off his right mechanical hand. With the Sith Lord beaten, the Emperor encourages Luke to kill his father, so that he can join him in his place. Luke then casts his weapon aside, declaring that he is a Jedi Knight like his father before him. Back to Endor, Han, Leia, and Chewbacca escape the bunker of the shield generator just before it detonates, thus lowering the Death Star shields and allowing the rebels to launch their assault. On the space station, after Luke declared he would not join the dark side, the Emperor boiled with rage. He attacked the Jedi with Force lightning, slowly increasing the intensity to torture Skywalker. Luke screamed to his father in agony, and Darth Vader was left with a choice: save his son or continue to serve the Emperor. Moved by his child's pleas for help, Vader lifts his master in the air and throws him into the Death Star's reactor shaft, where he also totally dies and never comes back in the ending of another trilogy for absolutely no reason. In Vader's last act of heroics, the Emperor's lightning had hit his life support and respirator, leaving him mortally wounded. At the time, the Millennium Falcon and the rebels' remaining forces entered the bowels of the Death Star, while the other rebels would dispel an enemy flagship. During the Death Star's evacuation, Luke carried his father to the foot of an Imperial shuttle ramp. Vader tells Luke to stop and remove his mask so for once he can look at his son's face with his own eyes. Luke complies and sees the face of his father, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin's face had been completely pale after not receiving any sunlight in 23 years, with his head retaining battle scars from his first fight with Obi-Wan long ago. In his dying breaths, Anakin tells his son that he was right, that there was still good left in him, and to tell his sister Leia the same. Their touching reunion comes to a close as the now redeemed Jedi Knight passed on, dying peacefully, smiling at his son. While Luke grieved the loss of his father, the Millennium Falcon reaches the Death Star's main reactor, firing concussion missiles and proton torpedoes at it, causing it to fall apart. Han watches the explosion on Endor, and in the moment senses Leia's love for Luke, leaving her for when he arrives. To his surprise, Leia informs Solo that Luke is her brother, and the two share a passionate kiss. That evening, Luke starts the fire to cremate the body of his father, still wearing the armor of Darth Vader. Anakin's body finally became one with the Force. The rebels celebrate the Alliance's greatest victory in the Galactic Civil War, launching fireworks across the night sky. Luke is reunited with his friends, Han, Lando, and the droids, Chewbacca, and his sister Leia, where he notices multiple Force ghosts, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and the now redeemed Anakin Skywalker. This pleases Luke. Not only has he become a full-fledged Jedi, but his father was now once again on the light side of the Force. Leia brings Luke back over to his friends as the three spirit ghosts watch along with pride. With the defeat of the Empire, the galaxy saw many years of peace, but this was not the end. When the next generation of evil rises, new heroes must come to action. With Luke as the only remaining Jedi, would he be able to create a new order? Or would he cast his teachings aside? Find out in the next episode of 59 Star Wars Skywalker Saga Retrospective, where we cover the sequel trilogy. Hope you guys enjoyed the second episode of the retrospective. If you guys did, don't forget to leave a like and let us know which movie of the original trilogy is your favorite in the comments below. Also, remember to subscribe to 59 to stay up to date with everything we do here, including the next episode in this series. And with that, I am heading out. Take care.